Hello everybody, Jonathan here from Triple M Games, and in this video we're going to be setting up the enemy so that it spawns from a tile map. So first off, let's open up the Godot Editor. And now that we're in the Godot Editor, let's open up the level 1 scene. Go to Scene, Open Scene, go up to Assets, Scenes, Levels, Level 1. And if we play this, we'll see that the aliens move down the screen. We can shoot our lasers and they'll be removed. And if I press the escape, it updates our score and high score. So the first thing we're going to do is we don't want our scene tree to have all our enemies spawning like this. I mean, whenever it does spawn in the game, it will appear like this, but we don't want to end up having to select our enemies and Control D, move it down, and hope that we don't end up with some sort of weird overlap. So what we're going to do is select all our enemies, left-click the bottom enemy, scroll up, hold Shift, and select the top enemy, press the Delete key, and delete nodes. Right-click on enemies, add child node, look for Tilemap, create, and now we have our tile map. This is what we're going to draw on. But first, the cell size is way too big. As you can tell, based on our player, these are really large tiles. So go into the inspector, look down for cells, and change the cell size to 16 by 16. Now this will appear much smaller and will fit our aliens quite nicely. Now we're not going to add any script to our tile map, but we are going to change the tile map name to enemies tile map, or enemy underscore tile map, and then go to the inspector, tile set. We're going to click the drop down arrow, click on new tile set, then click on tile set, and we get a new window, and we're going to click the plus icon to add a tile. We're going to go to assets, sprites, tile maps, and in this I put all the aliens. I'll show you this here in a moment. Let's see here. If we increase the size, you'll notice that our grid is set up exactly the way we had it set in the tile map, so a size of 16 by 16. I'm going to click on a new atlas, and this is where the fun begins. We will click on the grid snap, and then you just left click and drag for how many aliens you want. In this, we're going to use all 4. Now I'm going to explain this a little bit in a image editor. So basically, each alien in the sprite sheet is aligned like this. The 0 point being in the top left, and it keeps on increasing as it goes to the right. And whenever you move down, it jumps all the way back to the left. So we're going to make use of that and access each time we draw in one of these enemies. So based on the first, which is going to be enemy 0, then enemy 1, enemy 2, and enemy 3. Now if we play the game, nothing's going to really happen. The enemies aren't going to spawn, they're not going to animate, it's just the tile map. And once they hit the screen, they're just going to pass right through it. Another thing we're going to do is I like to rename the tile. So in order to do that, we're going to go to the inspector, tile set, click on the alien, and we'll click on our group, go to the inspector, selected tile, change the name to aliens. Now we can go back to our enemies and the enemy control script. We're going to go full screen. And I like to give some sort of variable because our enemies are going to have different health, and we can either do that based on the enemy ID number, or we can do this manually. For now, type export array color var shield color list. This is going to be a list of all the different colors based on the health value we have. We can see this by clicking on the enemy controller, and you'll see shield color list. And we're going to add around 7. The first one, this is going to be the alien's basic color, which will be white. The alien has no shield. Next one is going to be red. The next one is going to be a yellowish. Then a green. Then a teal. Well, kind of a light blue. Then a deeper blue. And then, I guess, a fuchsia type color. So now, we have our color list. The next thing we're going to do is go back into the script, and we're going to add another export variable. We're going to paste that one above, and this one is going to be enemy list. So these are going to be the enemies that we spawn in. This is not going to be a color, this is going to be a packed scene. And if we go back to the enemy and look in the inspector, we have an enemy list. We're going to set this to 4. Now currently we only have one enemy. So if I go to load, assets, instances, enemies, enemy 01. Now we now have one enemy, but we want to have the other enemies that we have in our tile map. So let's go over to scene, open scene, go to instances, enemies, enemy 01. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to scene, save scene as, enemy 02. Then save. And then I'm going to scroll up so I can see the file system. And we're going to open up our sprites, enemies, enemy 02. Then I'm just going to drag them into our setup here, which will be the texture sprite list. So now let's change the health variable to 2 and change the score to 5. Control S to save. Save scene as enemy 03. Then open up the enemy 03. Drag the enemy 03 sprites into their proper places. And then change the health to 3 and 5 to 10. Control S to save. Save scene as and enemy 04. Then we'll open up the enemy 04. And I have 3 sprites here. So I'm going to change the sprite list to 3. But this one kind of loops, kind of goes in one direction and then back in another. So I'm going to add another frame, because this is just going to be the second frame again. Which, 1, 2, 3, and then back to 2 again. And we'll also set the main texture here. Change this to 15 and 4. Control S to save, and we can now close the enemy. And now what we can do is in the file system, go to instances, enemies, and you can drag enemy 02, enemy 03, and enemy 04 to our enemy list. And as you can see, we have a nice little inspector window to change certain settings for the enemy color or other various characters. So we can close those for now. Go back to the enemy controller script. Go full screen. Now let's go down above process and create a new function, ready. We're going to add a few variables. Var tm, which will be tilemap, equals enemy tilemap. Then var size x equals tm, which is tilemap, dot get cell size dot x, and var size y equals tm dot get cell size dot y. So we're getting the width and the height of our tile maps. Var uc equals tm.getUsedCells. For position in UC, var id equals tm.getCellAutoTileCoord. And for the x and y coordinates, we're going to get the pose.x and pose.y. So position.x and position.y. Now below this, we need to create a new function, which is going to be func spawn enemy. And inside of here, we're going to add a few variables to this. So tilemap, ID, size x, size y, position. Back above, we're going to enter spawn enemy, and for this we're going to go tm id.x, size x, size y, and finally position. So down here in the spawn enemy is where the magic is going to happen. Var new enemy equals enemy list underscore ID. So we're getting the ID number of our enemy based on the enemy list variable we had exported above. And then we're going to instance that. And below here, we're going to do new enemy dot global position equals vector 2. So what we're going to do is make this a multi-line to make it easier to read. We're going to get pose.x times size x plus 1 times size x. And we're going to put a comma at the end of this. We're going to copy this and then paste it. And then we're going to change this for y. So pose.y times size y plus 1 times size y. And no comma at the end of this one. Now, if new enemy dot get health, we're going to give our enemy the shield color list, so all the enemies have the same color palette. I figured this would be easier than having each enemy have its own color palette. So new enemy dot shield list equals shield color list. Now add child new enemy. Then we're going to tm.set cell pose x pose.y minus 1. And what this is doing is it's removing the cell from the tile map each time it reaches this position. Okay, the next thing we need to do is the new enemy doesn't have a value of shield list. So what we're going to do is go to the enemy, and we're going to create a new variable, var shield list equals, and 2 brackets. The next thing we need to do is we need to set the enemy's color based on the shield list. So let's scroll down to ready, and down below the current sprite, and on this new line we're going to set self modulate equals shield list health minus 1. And the next thing we're going to do is if alive, we're going to go under the animate, then if self modulate doesn't equal shield list health minus 1, then we're just going to copy line 40 here. Self-modulate equals shield list health minus 1. This is just hopefully to stop it from changing the color every frame. And one last thing, let's jump back into the enemy controller, then navigate up to where we spawn the enemy, and go below this, then get enemy tilemap.queue_free. This will remove the tile map whenever the enemies have spawned. Now if we play the game, we will and there we go. And if you ever want to adjust anything later, all you have to do is select your enemy tile map and go to the inspector, tile set, click on your tile map, and then all you have to do is draw on the different tiles you have. Say we only have 2 tiles, so go to the enemy, and then the enemy list. That's going to be fine. You can draw on whatever you want. You can see we only have 2 enemies in the list, so if we draw these out, playtest the game, we have 2 enemies. Then we go to the inspector, tile set, go back to the tile, and we've added a new enemy to our list. So now if we click on our tile, we can draw out the 3rd, playtest the game, and we have our 3rd enemy. And there we go. And that concludes this tutorial. Keep an eye out for the next video, where we will give the enemy the ability to shoot lasers down at the player. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.